It's good to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back from Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my first take of the commanders in front of us on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're finishing up Final Fantasy content, and I figured with all the equipment support in the set, I wanted to find some equipment commanders I haven't covered, and one specific creature came to mind in Rograkh, son of Rograkh. And of course, having partner, we want to make sure we pick a partner for Rograkh. The one that to me makes the most sense is Ardenn, since Ardenn's ability allows you to auto attach equipment, and there's a lot of great equipment out there, but they are definitely expensive to equip. So what our goal here, basically, in this Boros pair, is to get both in, get some expensive to equip but easy to get down equipment down that give Rograkh a big buff and get in and get it attacking. First Strike, Menace, and Trample is a beautiful stat line, especially the bigger Rograkh gets, and is going to be a real commander damage threat to our opponents. We'll talk about that equipment. We'll talk about how we can make equipment out overall, and then we'll actually talk about increasing the damage too, making Rograkh a real one-turn, commander damage threat. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking it out down below. Well, all right. Anything that's going to make Rograkh better is what we care about. And the one thing that I actually looked up going into the video was cards like Lizard's Blades are reconfigure creature equipment, because what I wanted to know was can I use Ardenn to attach Lizard's Blades even though it has its own reconfigure bit? The answer was yes. So we can auto attach Lizard Blades to give Rograkh Double Strike, which is a huge deal because Double Strike with Menace and Trample just makes it even better. But the card that really made me want to do this deck, because I think a lot of people are going to be using this in a lot of decks, is A tier and Pre-Win. Equipment that says equipped creature has base power and toughness XX, where X is your life total. Well, truthfully, it really doesn't matter what your life total is as long as you're above 20. I mean, Rograkh's just going to start one-shotting people with commander damage, and I think that's what your deck wants to do anyway. I mean, it's not going to get down to at least turn 6. You've got lots of time to build up to it, and it's just going to become a real threat. Basilisk Collar can give Rograkh lifelink and Death Touch. Death Touch, again, pairing very good with Trample, since you only have to deal 1 damage and then Trample over. And Lifelink, getting that life back, keeping us alive, and, in case we need to swing out somebody and survive a turn around the table. Blackblade Reforged, giving +1/+1 for each land you control. Yes, we're in Boros, so we're not going to have as many lands as some other decks, but I think even if you're getting a +5/+5 or a 6/6 buff from Blackblade, it's just great at what it does. Brotherhood Regalia can give unblockability, which is huge, and Ward 2, so 2 great abilities, and can really protect the creature we're equipping to. Caduceus hands out lifelink, and if we have 30 or more life, it also gives out +5/+5 indestructible and prevent all damage to be dealt to it. Again, a great stat line, allowing us to gain life back while we're dealing damage. I think Colossus Hammer is another one of the huge ones. A 1-man equipment that's normally equip 8, but with Ardenn we could equip it for free, turning Rograkh into a 10/11 with Menace and Trample. Already better, right? And with Double Strike, that becomes a real threat. Same thing with something like Excalibur, giving +10/+0 in Vigilance. Again, already has First Strike, so it's going to be very difficult to block Rograkh effectively. And if you can pair Excalibur with something else, you're talking about a real problem for your opponents. Genji Glove does give out Double Strike, which is huge because, I mean, Double Strike's way better than First Strike in almost every gameplay scenario. But then you get an extra combat, meaning we potentially, with Rograkh, have a chance to knock multiple people out in 1 turn if we get it big enough, which is the end game for this deck. I think it's easy to say, well, that's what you want to do. And the truth is, yeah, that's what we want to do. But I think it's more than doable if we can get the right equipment in our hand and we could set up the right gameplay scenario. Maul the Skyclaves can get Rograkh in the hair, which is pretty great. We don't even need Ardenn to attach it. It can just auto-attach. But again, Ardenn can attach any number, so we get to just put as many on as we want. Nettlecyst giving the buff for each artifact and enchantment we control. It does come in with the Germ, so we can leave it on the Germ if we want to, but I don't think we have any reason to be honest. I think you want to put it on Rograkh. He's your free body and get going. Shadow Spear giving Trample and Lifelink. Again, Rograkh already has Trample, but Lifelink, again, is a huge deal. And it's a huge deal because it may be easy to say, oh, well, if you're only gaining 6 life, it's not that big of a deal. And I think that's fair in some senses. But if you take a big turn where you dome somebody for like 30 damage and knock them out with commander damage, or let's say it's even 20, getting 20 life is a huge deal, especially when that may be enough to insulate you from your opponents knocking you back out in the swing back. I mean, there's a perfect world where um, you may able to, on turn 3, have something like Rograkh plus Colossus Hammer plus Ardenn, and have Rograkh start swinging away. And if you add one of these lifelinks in there, right, that setup just gets even better over time. Sword and Feast of Famine giving that pro black and green, and whenever the equipped creature hits a player, they discard a card and we untap all of our lands. Untapping all the lands is, you can either look at that as a way to play more equipment or to leave up protection for Rograkh. Either way, Feast of Famine is a great card. We also have something similar as far as mana goes in the Reaver Cleaver, giving trample, and whenever the creature hits a player, we make that many treasure tokens. Either way, the netting of mana is important to get more equipment down, and especially since Ardenn, equips as many as we want at one time. The really nice thing is that I think ideally we want these on Rograkh, but we don't care. I mean, we can equip these to any other creature, and these are still going to be good. Sword of Vengeance hands out Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, so the important part here is that if we had to replay Rograkh for 2 or 4 with Ardenn now, we have a way to give it haste and have it get into combat. So we're not just reliant on him having to be around. Power Suit giving the equipped creature +1/+1 for each aura equipment attached to it in Ward 2. Two-handed axe is going to double the power of the equipped creature whenever it attacks. This is a big ability because especially if we can give Rograkh something like Double Strike, or even just as it sits, the difference between 5 and 10 or 7 and 14 is just massive, right? And over the course of a couple turns, it can make a big difference. And then a Wrecking Ball Arm can make Rograkh into a base 7/7, so then all your buffs go on top of that and can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So that's going to eliminate some of the blockers, even if our opponent tries to block into the menace, and is really just going to make a threat. But I say that to say that, like, Rograkh isn't the only thing we can equip. It's the ideal thing to equip, I think, because of its stat line and commander damage. We have other creatures. I mean, things like Armored Sky Hunters in the air, which is some nice invasion. Now, it has a great ability to attack and look at the top 6 and put an equipment from among them and get it auto attached in. But again, it's not a bad body. Bruenor is going to buff whatever is equipped by +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it and cheapen that first equip. Again, great for Rograkh when it has baked in trample, but Bruenor itself may not be a bad attacker once you get trample attached to it with that buff. Akiri's going to draw some cards, and then we can actually give out indestructible by untaching an equipment, which is important. It's not going to stop, single target exile removal, but protecting yourself from at least destruction can go a really long way in a lot of games to stop ourselves. We have things like Cloud, who comes in and searches for an equipment when he comes in. Not a bad body to attach things to. Codsworth can help us move around equipment with its bottom ability, but also packs Ward 2 for both of our commanders right on the top. Remember that it is worded commanders you control have Ward 2. So both Ardenn and Rograkh will get Word 2, which is pretty nice, and then add some mana, right, we can use to cast equipment. Firion is a card that may look a little odd in the sense that it's a great card. It gives our equipped creatures haste, which I think is, in this deck, honestly, the most important line of text. I love the idea of creating copies of our equipment and the fun world where you play a Colossus Hammer and you get 2 of them till end of turn and you get to equip them. But I think the top one's important because once Rograkh gets removed once, you start having to do that clock of putting him back in and then waiting the turn to attack. These things that give Rograkh haste are going to be the real differences to us to take this idea for our game plan and make sure we can do it the turn we want to do it, to make sure we can get in and deal some big damage. Halvar giving our equipped creatures double strike is great, absolutely great. We love it. That's going to make Rograkh even better. And then Halvar gets to attach 1 equipment or to a creature each turn, which is pretty cool. Kellen gets us that open the armory ability on its adventure sign, and on its regular side, it's a 2/2 double striker that buffs each other creature for each equipment attached to Kellen. Kellen's another example of a creature that you don't mind equipping to. It's already got double strike. It's a decent body, and it can be what we need it to be, right? If Rograkh dies and we need another good body to equip things to. Pierce to a Paladin, whenever equipment come in, we draw a card, and then all we equip for free. This is really great and kind of can be a backup Ardenn for us if Ardenn gets taken off the battlefield, but we still have some other pieces laying around. SRAM drawing us cards whenever we cast equipment is huge. Valdic becomes another choice for us to equip things to, beginning a combat on our turn for each or an equipment attached to Valdic. We make a 3/1 elemental with trample and haste. Now, you'll need to stack your triggers so that you want to attach things to Valdic before its ability resolves, but hey, it can be useful to make a couple extra tokens and spread some damage around. And then Wylith, whenever it attacks, draw a card for each equipment attached to it. So again, not another bad piece. It already has trample, and it can draw some cards, fill your hand, and keep the party going. The whole point here is we don't want to just rely on Rograkh, even though it's probably our best option. We want to try to diversify so that Ardenn can still do its job and get these key creatures in with their equipment. We have searchers, ways to find equipment we want. Open the armory, Steel Shaper's Gift. We already talked about Kellen's adventure side. We talked about Cloud going to get the things we want. I mean, more often than not, I think we're going to get the Colossus Hammers, the Excaliburs of the world. But it's important to know that you have multiple options for this, and you can go get multiple things. Fighter class does it when it comes in, and then levels up to make equips a little bit cheaper. Forge Anew brings an equipment back from our graveyard when it comes in, which can be relevant. Sometimes people will just choose to take out the equipment instead of the creature, and maybe we can get it back that way. Forge Anew also lets us equip at instant speed, which is kind of interesting. Forging the Tower Right Sword might look odd, but the first two just give you a treasure, and the third one you can either go get Halvar or an equipment of your choice. Again, we like Halvar because it can give Rograkh or any other creature that's equipped double strike, or we just go to get an equipment of your choice. It's a little slower, but I like it. It could be fun to build you up some extra mana over the course of a couple turns. And then Sigarda's Aid, a classic equipment piece in its own right. We can cast equipment at flash speed, and whenever an equipment comes in, you auto-attach it. So you get around that equip cost. It can be really useful to get your key things in and deal some big damage. And as far as the damage goes, I mistitled this slide like an absolute champion. Sorry, guys, I've been sick the last couple days. Jessica Thrice Reborn is an interesting card. It is a partner option. It could have been a partner option, but obviously not with the combination we wanted to do. But her 0 says we choose target creature until our next turn. If that creature would deal combat damage to one of our opponents, it deals triple that damage to that player instead. This is one of those abilities with Rograkh that's not going to take very long for you to capitalize into a massive, massive deal to our opponents. Think about it. Rograkh would just need to hit our opponents for 7 with this 0 going off to triple to commander damage, which isn't very hard, right, with Menace and Trample, depending on what we have equipped to it. Think about it the other way, then it could get even worse the more it's dealing, especially with things like lifelink and things like that. We also have an option like Kediss. Whenever a commander we control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. So now you can start spreading the damage. Remember that your commander damage is only combat damage. It's not effect damage. So Kediss can't knock the entire table out with commander damage. But what I think is really interesting about Kediss is remember that Ardenn's our commander too. So if we needed to load Ardenn up and get attacking, we also can for commander damage. Ardenn's just as much of a legal threat as Rograkh is. It's just Rograkh has the better stats, right? The better abilities. But that's what I like about Kediss and Jessica is they really can. Jessica can really affect anything. It can take any creature we want and triple its damage. Kediss, though, does affect both Ardenn and Rograkh, allowing us to have some nice options to hit our opponents with. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Rograkh and Ardenn, and I think going into testing, I'd probably want to fine-tooth more what equipment I'm playing. Buster Sword just didn't fit my budget, but I think Buster Sword is a great equipment, allowing you to get that buff and maybe draw a card and cast a spell for free. I think it's a little bit less good in this deck than some of the cards that give raw power just because of Rograkh's stat line and its abilities, but I think Buster Sword is a very useful card. I wanted to try something like the Aether Spark. I think it's a perfect card for this. Getting a counter to that creature, drawing cards, adding mana. I like it. And it's going to be very easy to just make the Aether Spark into a draw engine outlet and a mana outlet for us, which I think could be really useful. And then, of course, Hammer and Nazan, giving the indestructibility. Of course, a very good equipment in its own right, but I think I tried to prioritize equipment that just put in more raw power rather than indestructible because we have other ways to give indestructible. But I think Nazan's a great choice to come in right if we had a little bit more budget to play with or if we changed up which equipment we played. Well, let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what hands we're looking to keep and how we're going to set our game plan up. Here we're keeping a 2-lander, a little odd because the Spire does require an artifact to come in, but we do have a nice cheap equipment we can play. Open the armory, can go get into equipment of our choice. So there's like the Colossus Hammer if we want it. There's A tier and pre-win, so if we can get up to 6 mana, we're good there. We already got the Wrecking Ball we can potentially get in with Rograkh. And then we have Kellen there if we need to as another way to search for another one and some removal. So I like this hand. I was going to say the only thing we're missing is the 3rd mana for Ardenn, and we found it. So turn 1, we can slam Rograkh. My only worry about doing that is you give your opponents the most time possible to remove him. What I'd kind of rather do is get the Wrecking Ball plus Rograkh in this turn, since Rograkh's free, and then give our opponents only 1 cycle before I play Ardenn and get the Wrecking Ball attached this turn, and try to get Rograkh off to the races. Now, I expect that this is probably where people are going to start removing Rograkh, which is more than to be expected. At least he's only 2 now, which is a little bit more manageable to get him back down. Now, if nothing's changed and we're in the exact same spot we were before, I think I'd probably go start searching for something like a Colossus Hammer. I don't want to go get Excalibur because Excalibur isn't going to be cheap enough at the moment. I can play it. It's going to attach. I could hold up the Plowshares. Now Rogra's a 17. It can knock the person out it attacked before. I can put a hurting on somebody else. And again, the nice part is Rograkh gets removed. If somebody removes Rograkh, now Ardenn's a nice threat with some of this stuff that's sitting there. And I think that's the important part of this deck that is easy to forget is that we have these other bodies. This turn we're still 1 mana off pre-win. So, I mean, could be another really big lethal threat. I don't mind the Thran Power Suit. I mean, that makes him 7, 17, 18, 19, 20. Almost lethal. If we went and found another 1 mana equipment, something like Shadow Spear, and played it too, I mean, there you go. There's 21 or 22. But again, now you're gaining 22, right? We're presenting lethal. And if somebody, let's say somebody removes Rograkh, right, which I think is more than fair that somebody would try to do that. Now we put them all on Ardenn, 7, 17, 18, 22. She just doesn't have the trample baked in, but she gets the trample with Shadow Spear, right? She just doesn't have the first strike baked in or the menace baked in, but otherwise she's still dealing a ton of damage and we're in good shape. Or we replay Kellen, who has double strike, and now he's getting all this big damage and this big life gain. Yeah, it's a little Christmas landy, but I think it goes to show you like what we can do potentially on the top end. Remember, this is what Voltron decks are trying to do. We're trying to load up. We're trying to deal this big damage. This is what we're trying to do. And your more experienced opponent should know that and hopefully should understand what you're trying to do before you get in there. Here on this one, we're keeping a 3-lander with an Arcane Signet. There's Freya, can tap to help cast equipment or activate equip abilities. We see Blackblade there, so we have at least 1 equipment to start. We can get Freya in. Again, I don't see the need to get Rograkh in until this turn. Right, now we have the Blackblade ready to go. I just realized we could go Arcane Signet into Blackblade because this can tap for a red to cast an equipment. So that makes more sense. Because then now in this turn, right, you have Ardenn for 3. And I'd have 2 mana. Could I get something else down? No, I can't. But the Blackblade attaches. +3, not as great as it could be, but we're at least getting ourselves there. Now with 5 mana, you got the Mithril Coat, you got the sword. Sorry, 6 mana, right? Could put Danathan as a backup, and then just go into the sword, get it attached. So now you're at 4, 4, 5, a 6, 5, right? First strike, menace, trample, vigilance. Not too bad. It'll get better over the course of the time. Again, Danathan is another one of these creatures that I love. The equipment would have been a little bit cheaper to cast, but Danathan is another one that I like because she has lifelink baked in, which is, again, a huge deal when you start gaining some life back. There's Firion. I think you just try to Mithril Coat Rograkh just to keep it alive. Freya is another great choice because she has flying during our turn, so it can become a real threat. I think we're just missing one of those big equipment pieces that gives a big buff. And that we got plenty of damage. If somebody kills Rograkh, we just move it to somebody else. I mean, the cleaver helps. I think all we did in this time was just missed the big equipment, but I think we still got enough value, especially with the cleaver, to start making treasures. Furion can hand out some nice abilities. Otherwise, not too bad, not as explosive as the first one, but I think we still had a decent setup, and I think that kind of shows us what we need. Well, let's get into our last one here. Got a 3-lander with both Seal Shaper's Gift and Open the Armory, so we get to really just go find what we want. Daneth and then Dispatch, a removal spell that just taps on a creature, but if we have 3 or more artifacts, it actually exiles instead. Kind of becomes a Swords to Plowshares in that sense. Should be really easy for us since we have that. But I think I'm going to Steel Shape right away. To me, it makes sense to get the Colossus Hammer, right? It's the thing that probably everybody's going to want to go get. So now on turn 2, we could open the Armory, right? But if we do that, right, then we can't play Rograkh. So I think to me it's Hammer plus Rograkh. Basically get it set up. We're going to televise exactly what we're trying to do, but I think our opponents know exactly what we're trying to do. Get it to Rograkh, take the attack. Now in here in turn 4, go ahead and hit the Armory. What I think would make the most sense is with something that can hand out Double Strike. Can't go for like Genji Glove. It's going to be too expensive. I'm trying to think of what else in the deck gives out Double Strike. Lane Line Axe would be a little too expensive. What else can give out the biggest raw power buff for the cost? Black Blade would just be 4, so we'd be looking at 14, which still would be aggressive. I'm just trying to think through all the equipment in my head, what makes the most sense, because we have to play it for 2 mana, right? That's the key thing here is, I guess Wrecking Ball Arm makes it 17. That's not a terrible idea. So maybe you go for that. Equip it, get it in. And again, now if we die, right, we can just get him on to somebody else. I think it's just what? Reaver Cleaver, hold up the Dispatch, make a ton of treasures, get Danitha in. You have the inventory, which can, move if need be. But the amount of treasures we have now should just pretty much bankroll anything we need. And if Rograkh dies, you just move them over. Otherwise, this is 17-18 with Trample. Not going to take very many hits to end the game out here. And if somebody does, I think we just move them over to Danitha, right? And just have Danitha attack until we can get Rograkh back down. I know these are kind of quick, hand-fisted playtests, but truthfully, I think with a deck like this, you're going to try to streamline to either souping Rograkh up to just make it happen, or try to get a nice alternate threat in there to make it happen if need be. The Furion does help, in the sense that, if Rograkh truly were to die, let's say that, we could go Furion into Rograkh. Rograkh gets haste as long as it's equipped. You reattach. Right, with that, we would have enough treasures to go Ketis, and then now we're just, in good shape. But I'd love to know what you think of Ardenn Rograkh down in the comment section below. Again, you're pretty much going to televise what you're trying to do, but I think it still makes it very interesting if that's your goal. Boros equipment, get in, deal some big damage. And Rograkh did just get that pretty Final Fantasy version at the Magic Fest, if that's something you care about. I know some people will be chasing after that. But I'd love to know what you think of this one, and I will catch you on the next one.